dog and her puppies are left to die. But the unexpected happens. Rosie and her puppies were cruelly thrown from a car, left to die. Imagine a mother's desperation, abandoned with her puppies by the highway. What would you do if you found an entire family abandoned by the roadside? A lonely truck driver, a desperate dog, and a decision that would forever change the meaning of family. Prepare your heart, as this story will make you cry with emotion. Before we begin, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss upcoming stories. The morning fog still covered Interstate 95 like a ghostly shroud when the first rays of sunlight began to tinge the horizon. The wet asphalt reflected the headlights that occasionally cut through the twilight, and the cold air carried the characteristic smell of wet earth mixed with diesel from passing trucks. It was another day in the life of Tom Murphy, a 45-year-old truck driver who had made this highway his second home for 2 decades. His tired brown eyes, marked by wrinkles that told stories of thousands of miles traveled, focused on the road while his calloused hands firmly held the steering wheel of his blue Peterbilt, his faithful companion on long journeys. The radio crackled softly, playing old country songs, his only company in the lonely early hours. Tom adjusted the rearview mirror, and for a moment, his reflection revealed a man with a well-trimmed gray beard and a countenance that carried a mixture of kindness and melancholy. Loneliness had been his most constant companion since losing his wife 5 years ago. That's when his experienced eyes caught something unusual on the shoulder. At first, he thought it was just another of the many abandoned objects he saw daily on this stretch of New England highway, but something about that diffuse silhouette made his heart tighten. He slowed down, going against his always tight schedule. The sound of the truck's brakes echoed through the silent morning. The smell of burnt rubber mixed with the air's humidity as Tom carefully maneuvered to the shoulder. His heart beat faster, guided by a presentiment he couldn't explain. He grabbed his flashlight from the glove compartment, the same one his late wife had given him, saying that light always attracts light, words that now seemed laden with greater meaning. The cold metal of the flashlight in his hands brought a familiar sense of comfort. As he got down from the truck, the cutting cold of the Massachusetts morning made Tom pull his coat tighter around his body. That's when he heard it, a soft sound, almost imperceptible among the noise of passing cars. A cry? No, several cries, small and desperate. The flashlight first revealed a pair of frightened eyes. It was Rosie, though he didn't know her name yet, a light-furred Shih Tzu, now dirty and tangled. Her body trembled, not just from cold, but from fear and exhaustion. Around her, for puppies huddled against her body, seeking protection and warmth. "My God," Tom muttered, feeling a lump form in his throat. The scene before him was like a punch to the stomach. An entire family, abandoned as if they were worth nothing, left to their fate on the side of a busy road. The dog looked at him with eyes that seemed to contain all the suffering in the world, but also a spark of hope. Tom noticed a worn collar around her neck, without identification, the last vestige of a previous life someone decided to discard. The wind blew stronger, bringing with it the distant sound of a siren. Tom looked at his watch. He was late for his delivery in Portland, but something inside told him this moment was bigger than any commitment. His flashlight remained focused on the small family, as if illuminating not just that moment, but a new path that was about to open. A phrase echoed in his mind, something his wife used to say, "Sometimes, God puts angels in disguise on our path." As he observed that moving scene, Tom couldn't help but wonder who really was the angel there, him, or that small family who, without knowing, was about to transform his life forever. Tom had never been one to hesitate, but at that moment his hands trembled as he searched the compartment behind the seat for something that might help. Among blankets and travel supplies, he found the remains of a sandwich he'd saved for later and a bottle of water. Life on the road had taught him to always carry extra supplies, but he never imagined they would serve to feed an abandoned family of dogs. He approached slowly, speaking in a low, gentle voice. "Hey, little ones, everything's all right now." Sarah, the attendant at the Pine Tree station where Tom always stopped during his trips, watched the scene from the establishment's window. A middle-aged woman with red hair tied in a messy bun, known for her kindness to street animals. Tom Murphy, what have you found this time? She asked, coming out of the station with a curious expression. Something that'll break your heart? Sarah, Tom replied, while trying to gain Rosie's trust with pieces of sandwich. The dog hesitated for a moment, but hunger spoke louder. Soon she allowed Tom to get close enough to examine the puppies. Mike, the station mechanic, a burly man with permanently greasy hands but a giant heart, joined them. We need to call the police, he said, shaking his head in disapproval. This is a crime. Abandoning animals like this. The first sign that something bigger was brewing came when Sarah mentioned a recent series of abandonments in the area. This is the third case this week, she said, biting her lip. Something's wrong around here. Tom felt a shiver down his spine. The second sign came when he noticed a peculiar mark on Rosie's collar, a half-erased symbol that seemed familiar, but he couldn't remember from where. I'll call Mary from the shelter, Sarah said, already pulling out her phone. She needs to know about this. Meanwhile, Mike brought a cardboard box lined with old towels. At least we can give them some comfort for now. The first truly disturbing incident happened when a black car slowed down as it passed them. The driver, wearing sunglasses even on that cloudy morning, seemed to observe them for too long before suddenly accelerating. Did you see that? Mike asked, frowning. That car has passed by here twice already this morning. Sarah returned with worrying news from the shelter. Mary says they're full, but she'll make it work. She mentioned something about an ongoing investigation, but wouldn't give details over the phone. Tom looked at his watch again. His cargo needed to be in Portland in a few hours, but how could he simply continue his journey? Rosie had already come close enough to allow his touch, and the puppies, though still scared, were beginning to show curiosity. You can't abandon them too, Tom, Sarah said, as if reading his thoughts. Not after finding them like this. Mike scratched his unshaven beard, thoughtful. I can keep them in the back kennel for a few hours, until Mary arrives. But something about this whole story doesn't smell right. One of the puppies, the smallest one, started coughing worryingly. Sarah knelt to examine it better. This little one needs a vet. And fast. It was at this moment that Tom made his first crucial decision, one that would change not just that morning, but his entire future. I'm going to call the company and explain the situation. Some deliveries can wait, lives can't. The first complication arose when Mary arrived at the Pine Tree station. Unlike expected, she didn't come in the shelter's van, but in her personal car, an old blue Camry. Her green eyes revealed concern as she examined the documents in her hands. We have a bigger problem than we thought, said Mary, showing photos of other abandoned animals. All Shih Tzus, all with the same mark on the collar. She pointed to the half-erased symbol on Rosie's collar, a small circle with what appeared to be a stylized G. Tom felt his stomach turn when a distant memory began to form. A few weeks ago, he had seen an ad in a local newspaper about a breeder called Golden Paws that was liquidating all their dogs. The second complication came with this revelation. Golden Paws closed suddenly, explained Mary, but no one knows where all the animals went. We're finding them abandoned throughout the New England region. Sarah, who was caring for the puppies, noticed something disturbing. Something's wrong with them, isn't there? Besides this sick little one. She hesitated, as if choosing her words. They seem different from normal Shih Tzus. The first attempted solution came when Mike suggested taking them to a nearby veterinary clinic. I know Dr. Anderson. He can look at them without charging much, he said. But when they arrived at the clinic, they found a line of people with other dogs of the same breed, all recently rescued. Tom had a disturbing flashback. He remembered a conversation he'd overheard at a roadside restaurant about a month ago. Two men discussing defective merchandise and necessary disposal. At the time, he hadn't made the connection, but now, they're experiment dogs, declared Dr. Anderson after examining the puppies. Someone was trying to breed a new bloodline, but something went wrong. The veterinarian pointed out subtle but worrying characteristics in the little ones. These will need special care. The first twist came when the police arrived at the clinic. Detective Roberts, a man with a serious expression and a folder full of documents, revealed that Golden Paws was just the tip of the iceberg. We're investigating a network of illegal breeders. You've just found important evidence. Tom watched Rosie, who wouldn't leave her puppies. Despite the fear still visible in her eyes, there was a fierce determination to protect her offspring. How long do they have? He asked the veterinarian, referring to the sick puppy. Without specialized treatment? Days maybe, replied Dr. Anderson. But I know a clinic in Boston that can help. The problem is the cost. Sarah put her hand on Tom's shoulder. You've already done more than enough. You can't abandon your life because of this. But Tom kept looking at the dog family, remembering his late wife's words about angels in disguise. Detective Roberts frowned while checking his phone. We just received a tip. Looks like they found more abandoned animals near Providence. Same pattern. Tom took out his wallet, looked at the photo of his wife that he always carried with him. Catherine always said that destiny doesn't knock on our door. Sometimes it appears on the shoulder of a road. How much is the complete treatment? Asked Tom, his voice firm despite the apprehension. The amount mentioned by the veterinarian represented a good portion of his savings, but something inside him had already made a decision. The rain began to fall outside, and the sound of drops against the clinic's roof created a kind of background music for that decisive moment. Tom knew he was at a crossroads, not just for the dogs, but for his own life. Are you sure about this? Asked Sarah, concerned. It's a lot of money. Tom observed Rosie's eyes once more, no longer frightened, but full of a trust he couldn't betray. Some debts aren't paid with money, he replied, remembering how lonely he felt after losing Catherine. Sometimes, life charges us in love. The moment of apparent defeat came as an unexpected blow. After 3 days at the specialized clinic in Boston, the weakest puppy, now called Lucky, took a significant turn for the worse. Dr. Marcus, a canine genetics specialist, called Tom for a serious conversation in his office. What they did to these dogs is criminal, explained the doctor, showing tests that revealed concerning genetic alterations. They tried to create an improved variation of the breed, but the experiments caused serious health problems. Tom had already spent almost all his savings on the initial treatment. The Pine Tree Station was temporarily caring for the other puppies, with Sarah and Mike taking turns in their care. Rosie wouldn't leave Lucky's side, refusing to eat unless in the room where he was hospitalized. The complete treatment will cost triple what we imagined, said Dr. Marcus, his voice heavy with the news. And even then, I can't guarantee it will be enough. Tom sat heavily in the office chair, feeling the weight of every decision that had brought him here. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. His trucking company was losing patience with his absences. Then a crucial discovery changed everything. Detective Roberts appeared at the clinic with new documents. We found Golden Paws financial records, he said, spreading papers on the table. They had special insurance for the animals. Insurance that's still valid. Tension increased when they discovered they would need to prove Rosie and the puppies came from that breeder. The collar mark wasn't sufficient evidence, and those responsible for Golden Paws were making the process difficult. There's something you need to see, said Sarah, arriving hurriedly at the clinic. On her phone, she showed old photos from the breeder's website. Look at the watermark on the images. It's the same symbol as the collars. Tom spent the night awake, studying every document with the detective. The preparation for the final confrontation was beginning to take shape. They discovered Golden Paws was just a front for a much larger scheme. They have breeding facilities in 3 different states, explained Roberts. They use different names, but the pattern is always the same. When experiments go wrong, they simply discard the animals. A Dr. Marcus's assistant, who had been analyzing the puppy's DNA, brought another piece of the puzzle. We found specific genetic markers. They signed their own crime without knowing. Time was running out. Lucky needed urgent surgery, and the other puppies were beginning to show signs of similar problems. Tom looked at his empty wallet, at the phone full of unanswered messages from his boss, at Rosie's hopeful eyes. I can't let them die, said Tom, his voice choked. Not after all this. Sarah arrived with more news. Her social media post about the case had gone viral. People from all over the country were starting to report similar cases, forming a frightening map of abandonment and cruelty. "We're putting together a joint lawsuit," explained the detective. "But we need to keep these dogs alive as evidence. They're our most concrete proof." Tom looked through the veterinary hospital window, watching the city's movement. Somewhere out there, those responsible for all this remained free, probably already planning their next experiment. Dr. Marcus returned with new tests. "There's something different in their DNA," he said, pointing to a sequence on the monitor. "Something that could only have been done in a specific laboratory." "How much time do we have?" asked Tom, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "For lucky, 48 hours at most," answered the doctor. "To prove their origin and activate the insurance? Even less." Sarah held Tom's hand. "You're not alone in this," she said. "We're all going to help." Mike arrived bringing more allies, other truckers who had known Tom for years, all willing to contribute. "Family is family," said one of them, "even if they have 4 paws." Night was falling over Boston as Tom stroked Rosie, who had finally fallen asleep beside Lucky. "We're going to make it," he whispered, more to himself than to the dogs. "There has to be a way." The main confrontation began on a rainy Thursday morning. The glass and steel veterinary clinic building in Boston reflected the gray sky as luxury cars parked in the lot. Detective Roberts had called an emergency meeting, where Golden Paws representatives would finally appear, after days of subpoenas and legal pressure. Tom watched through the meeting room window, his reflection mixing with the raindrops running down the glass. In recent weeks, he'd lost weight and sleep, but his eyes maintained a fierce determination that Sarah said was inspiring. "They're here," announced Mike, who was keeping watch at the entrance. 3 lawyers and a man in an Italian suit that probably costs more than my car. George Peterson, Golden Paws owner, entered the room as if he owned it. Tall, impeccably dressed, with well-trimmed gray hair and a gold Rolex on his wrist. His artificial smile froze upon seeing the number of people present. Besides Tom, Sarah, and Mike, there were representatives from animal protection groups, other veterinarians, and 2 pro bono legal teams. "You can't prove these dogs are ours," declared Peterson, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Thousands of Shih Tzus are abandoned every day. It's regrettable, but we're not responsible for each one." Tom felt his hands clench into fists, but Dr. Marcus took the lead. The geneticist veterinarian projected a series of images on the wall: DNA analyses, genetic markers, chromosomal comparisons. "These specific DNA alterations could only have been made in a laboratory," explained the doctor, pointing to highlighted sequences. "And only 3 laboratories in the country have this technology. Curiously, all of them have contracts with your companies, Mr. Peterson." The bigger revelation came when Sarah, trembling slightly but with a firm voice, stood up to present her discovery. "We received this anonymously last night," she said, connecting her laptop to the projector. The video showed the interior of Golden Paws, with dates and times clearly visible. Rosie appeared in several scenes, still pregnant, wearing the same characteristic collar. The images showed procedures being performed without any safety or ethical protocols. "Recognize this mark, Mr. Peterson?" asked Detective Roberts, placing Rosie's collar on the table. His calm voice carried a veiled threat. "Because we have 27 identical collars, all found on abandoned dogs in the last 2 months." Tom couldn't take his eyes off the businessman. Through the window facing the veterinary ICU, he could see Lucky fighting for life, connected to machines that beeped at regular intervals. The crucial decision moment came when the lawyers requested a break for consultation. They left the room, leaving a heavy silence. Sarah held Tom's hand, which trembled with contained anger. "They'll try to make a deal," whispered Roberts, running his hand through his gray hair. "But we need more than money. We need to stop them from doing this again." That's when Dr. Marcus, who had spent the night analyzing new data, made an announcement that changed everything. Their experiments weren't just unethical, they were illegal. They used a genetic modification technique banned in domestic animals since 2019. The procedure was banned after causing extreme suffering and premature death in test subjects. Peterson, who had just returned with his lawyers, lost his composure for the first time. His face turned red and a vein pulsed in his forehead. "You don't understand," he exploded, ignoring his lawyer's desperate gestures. "We were creating the next evolution of the breed. A more resilient, more beautiful Shih Tzu that could be sold for 10 times the normal value. More profitable," interrupted Tom, his voice loaded with contempt. He rose slowly, years of heavy work evident in his imposing posture. "At the cost of their suffering. At the cost of innocent lives you discarded like trash when your experiments went wrong." The conflict's resolution began to take shape when Golden Paw's lawyers, realizing the situation was irreversible, changed their strategy. They offered not only to cover all medical expenses, but also to create a $1 million fund to treat other affected animals. "Not enough," declared Detective Roberts, opening a folder full of documents. "We want complete records. All buyers, all dogs, all laboratories involved. And you're going to pay for every treatment, every surgery, every day of recovery." Tom approached the ICU window again. Rosie was inside, allowed by the medical team to stay near Lucky. Even sick and scared, she never abandoned her puppies. "She's more human than you," he said without turning. "She understands what love, loyalty, family means. Things money can't buy." Pressure increased when shouts were heard from outside. Local media had arrived, alerted by the video Sarah had posted that went viral overnight. A crowd of animal protectors and outraged citizens was gathering in front of the clinic. "It's over," said Roberts, a satisfied smile on his face as 2 police officers entered the room. "We have warrants for all laboratories involved. Mr. Peterson, you're under arrest for animal cruelty, fraud, and violation of federal regulations." As if fate answered, Dr. Marcus came running from the surgical center at that exact moment. "Lucky is responding to treatment," he announced, his tired face lit up with a smile. "The new medications are working." The victory, however, was just the beginning. In the days that followed, the seized documents revealed a network of illegal breeding facilities that extended throughout the northeastern United States. Dozens of families discovered their dogs were part of unauthorized experiments. "Did you know this would happen?" Sarah asked Tom, a week later, as they watched Rosie finally relax, surrounded by her recovering puppies. "When you stopped on that road?" Tom smiled, thinking about how his life had changed. "Catherine always said our greatest acts of love begin with small moments of courage." He took his wallet from his pocket, looking at the faded photo of his late wife. "I think she would be proud." The legal process would follow its course, but the immediate battle was won. Golden Paws and its associated laboratories were shut down. A treatment fund was established for all affected animals, and new legislation began to be discussed to prevent similar cases. "What are you going to do now?" asked Mike, who had become a close friend throughout the journey. They were all gathered in the clinic's outdoor area, celebrating Lucky's recovery with an improvised small barbecue. Tom looked at Rosie and her puppies, now safe and recovering. The answer was clear in his heart long before it reached his lips. In fact, maybe it had always been there, since that foggy morning on the road when he decided to stop his truck. 6 months had passed since that decisive morning on the highway. The Pine Tree Station was especially busy that sunny Saturday, decorated with colorful banners and balloons. Sarah had organized a small party to celebrate Rosie's puppies' graduation from their basic obedience training. Tom watched the scene with a smile, leaning against his new truck, smaller than before, but perfect for his new regional routes that allowed him to return home every night. Lucky, now a healthy and playful puppy, never left his heels. "Who would have thought that little fighter would become the most mischievous?" commented Mike, serving drinks to guests. The mechanic had transformed part of his garage into a small temporary shelter for rescued animals. The transformation wasn't just the dogs. Sarah's station was now known as a support point for abandoned animals, with a network of volunteers always alert. The Golden Paws case had awakened the community to a problem that always existed but many preferred to ignore. Rosie, lazily lying in the sun, watched her puppies playing with children who came to the party. Her fur, once tangled and dirty, now shone like silk. The old collar had been replaced by a new sky blue one, with a golden tag that read Murphy family. "Sometimes fate has an interesting sense of humor," said Tom, watching his new family. "I was looking for a reason to start over, and I found 5. The Golden Paws case resulted in significant changes in animal breeding legislation. Peterson and his partners were convicted, and the treatment fund continued helping animals across the country." "Catherine was right," Tom said softly, more to himself than others. "Angels really do appear in the most unexpected places." He knew his late wife would be smiling, proud of the peculiar family he had formed. The party continued until dusk, with people coming and going, some bringing their own rescued pets, others seeking information about adoption. Rosie and her puppy's story had become a symbol of hope and transformation. Tom now divided his time between regional deliveries and volunteer work with rescued animals. His house, once quiet and empty, now overflowed with life and love. Lucky slept in his bed every night, as if still needing to make sure his savior was nearby. "You know," said Sarah, approaching with a fresh cup of coffee, "that morning on the road changed all of us." Tom nodded, watching the sunset painting the sky in orange hues. The same highway where it all began snaked toward the horizon, reminding that sometimes the best destinations are those we don't plan. "Some stops," he replied, with Rosie nestled at his feet, "are worth a lifetime of travels." Which of Rosie's puppies touched your heart the most during the story? Write in the comments. And for those who made it this far, don't miss the equally moving story of Rusty and Lucy in the video appearing on your screen now. It's another story that will touch your heart,